Hey, this is Tommy John, and you're listening to the Sports Circus.
You can put it on the board. Yes!
Welcome to the Sports Circus. I'm your ringmaster, Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP Television. Today's show is brought to you by UppercutChops.com. Check out their tasty selection of all-natural, dry-aged USDA, prime Angus, and Wagyu steaks and chops. Wait till you taste their best-in-class New York steaks, the filet mignon, and of course the king of all those gigantic cowboy cut and tomahawk cut ribeyes. Best I've ever had, probably be the best you ever have as well. Check them out at UppercutChops.com. That's UppercutChops.com. Or give them a call, find out what's for dinner. 714-948-0100. 714-948-0100. Again, 714-948-0100 for UppercutChops.com. All right, welcome in, everybody listening in on our CBS NBC Fox Sports affiliate and independence from coast to coast. Everybody tuning in on Cox, Comcast, Spectrum, Frontier, Oceanic, Time Warner, Spectrum, WOW, and independent cable affiliates in select markets, Hotel TV, we're applicable, as well as all streaming platforms. Pick your favorite one, and even on Facebook, Chicago Food Favorites. Thanks for joining us on Chicago Food Favorites on Facebook, a fun food group. Check it out, folks. On Facebook, it's free, it's fun. Talk about your favorite restaurants, your favorite recipes, and your favorite foods as well. Check it out again, Chicago Food Favorites on Facebook. All right. So, as I look at what's happening in the sporting world, like everybody else, we're always trying to come up with something a little bit not so mainstream. And some of the relations to this are a little mainstream, but then again, we don't follow the same news bureau nonsensical BS that most of the other shows do on pick your favorite station, network affiliate, whatnot. I want to talk a little bit about a guy by the name of Joe Jackson. People know him as Shoeless Joe Jackson. Born way back on July 16th of 1887. Passed away on December 5th of 1951. Nicknamed Shoeless Joe. And he was an outfielder. Of course, he played for, well, the Philadelphia Athletics, the Cleveland Naps and Indians, and of course, the Chicago White Sox. So he had a .356 career batting average, fourth highest in the history of Major League Baseball. Why are we talking about this? I'll get to it in a minute. He's often remembered for his association, of course, with the Black Sox scandal from 1919, which, well, of course, there's some conspiracy on that, some isn't, and we don't really know, but we know what happened. We know that the White Sox were the best team at that time, and they threw the World Series to Cincinnati back then, in case you don't know. In fact, that goes all the way back to, well, we'll say the Cincinnati Reds. Some call them the Red Stockings, some call them the Red Legs, whatever it is. Let's say the Cincinnati Reds. And so that's how Cincinnati won one of their World Series. But you go all the way back and you think about Commissioner Kennesaw Mountain Landis. This is the guy that banned Joe Jackson from playing baseball after the 1920 season. What's interesting is this was 1919. Now we're talking about after the 1920 season. Now, of course, during the World Series in question, Jackson had led both teams in several stats and categories and set a World Series record with 12 hits. And Jackson's role, of course, mind you, that was in 4 games. Jackson's role in the scandal alleged created banishment from the game and exclusion, of course, from the Baseball Hall of Fame. Of course, you know that's exactly where we're going. But I want a little backstory on this. So you think about Joe Jackson, and he played for 3 teams, as I mentioned, during a 12-year period. Did play in left field. He spent 1908 and 9 as a member of the Philadelphia Athletics, of course, which today are the Oakland Athletics, but soon to become the Vegas A's. In 1910, with the minor league New Orleans Pelicans, now, of course, that's a basketball team now, but it was a baseball team back in the day before joining the Cleveland Naps at the end of 1910. And he was still considered a rookie in 1911 when he hit for a 4.08 average. That's right, 4.08. That's insane. 4.08, folks. That's right. Okay. Nonetheless, a single season record for a rookie that still stands 115 years later. He remained in Cleveland until early 1915. Then he played, of course, for the White Sox through 1920. Later, Joe Jackson played baseball under an assumed name throughout the South. He was that good. Everybody wanted him. And Jackson holds the Cleveland Guardians and Chicago White Sox franchise record for triples in a season. That's for over 100 years. That's right. In 1999, he ranked number 35 on the Sporting News list of the 100 greatest baseball players. And mind you, the guy hadn't played for 100 years, thereabouts. Actually, we'll say 80 years at that point. And was the finalist for the Major League Baseball All-Century team. No question, he should have been. And the fans voted him as the 12th best outfielder of all time. Now, baseball's been going on for 150 years, and he's right there. So, he also ranks 33rd on the all-time list for non-pitchers, according to the win shares formula developed by sabermetrician, right? Sabermetrics, right? Sabermetric and sabermetrician Bill James. And baseball legend Babe Ruth said that he modeled his hitting method after Joe Jackson. Now that's nuts. So you want to talk about a rock star? This guy was the rock star's rock star. So go back to his early life, right? So he was born in Pickens County, South Carolina. The oldest son of George, a sharecropper. While Jackson was still a baby, his father moved the family to Pelzer, South Carolina. A few years later, the family moved to a company town called Brandon Mill on the outskirts of Greenville, South Carolina. Of course, an attack of measles almost killed him when he was 10, and he was bedridden for 2 months, paralyzed, while a nurse and the staff actually brought him back. And I have to tell you, that was a miracle in itself. So starting way back at the age of 6 or 7, Joe Jackson worked in one of the town's textile mills as a linthed, and a derogatory name, of course, for a mill hand. And family finances required Joe to take a 12-hour shift. So he was doing 12-hour shifts regularly at the mill, and since education at the time was a luxury, the Jackson family couldn't afford it, so Joe was uneducated. And of course, his lack of education ultimately became an issue throughout Jackson's life, even if it affected his value of his memorabilia and so forth. Yes, it did. It absolutely did. So in the collectibles market, who knows? I mean, people, for whatever reason, said Joe wasn't a really smart guy, so we're not going to pay that much money, which is lunacy to imagine. And of course, he often had his wife sign his signature. Now, consequently, anything autographed by Joe Jackson himself brings a premium when sold, including one autograph which sold for $23,500 way back about 35 years ago, which really in today's time is about $57,000. But of course, in restaurants, rather than ask someone to read the menu to him, he would wait until his teammates ordered and then ordered one of the items that he heard. He was a little embarrassed. I don't blame him. Back in 1900, when he was 13, his mother was approached by one of the owners of the Brandon Mill and started to play for the Mill baseball team. So that's back when he was 13 years of age. Yet he was the youngest player on the team. Of course, he was paid $2.50 to play on Saturdays, the equivalent of basically $94 of about today's time. And when he was initially a pitcher, but one day he accidentally broke another player's arm with a fastball, and no one wanted to bat against him, so the team manager placed him in the outfield. So that's how Joe Jackson became an outfielder, but his hitting ability made him a celebrity around town. Of course, around that time, he was given a baseball bat that he named Black Betsy, and he was compared to Champ Osteen, another player from the Mill who made it to the major leagues. And he moved from the Mill team to the Mill team in search of a better pay. So he went from team to team to team, trying to figure it out, playing semi-pro baseball back in 1905. And you ask yourself, look, what did this guy really do in his career? He did a ton. And I'll tell you this much just right now, just off the top, before I get into anything else. Yeah, his batting average career, .356, hit 54 home runs in a beaten ball, dead ball era, 792 RBIs, did play for the A's, the Indians, and the White Sox. He did win a World Series with the White Sox in 1917 before the Black Sox situation. So the guy basically is a two-time champion. And, of course, he's even in Cleveland's Hall of Fame. So in case you're wondering, where the hell are we going with this? Listen, I'm going to get to that in just a moment. But you got to remember, there is a story behind Joe Jackson. Why are we talking about it? I'm going to go ahead and get into that after we finish up a little bit more background about him, because you really need to know. And so without getting into the details, I'll just cover the nickname real quick. In case you didn't know, that whole Shoeless Joe thing, in an interview published back in October of 1949 of Sport magazine, Jackson recalled he got his nickname during a Mill game played in Greenville, South Carolina. Jackson had blisters on his foot from a new pair of cleats, which hurt so much that he took his shoes off before he was at bat. As play continued, a heckler fan noticed him, and they said, "Hey, Jackson's running to third in his socks," and shouted, quote, "You shoeless son of a gun, you," close quote. And the resulting nickname Shoeless Joe stuck with him throughout the remainder of his life. Back here with more Joe Jackson, and where we're going, I think you probably may know, but there are a few twists to it. Don't go anywhere. Lots more to come here on the Sports Circus.
Attention business owners, you and your customers are listening to this right now. Face it, every business needs customers, even yours. The Sports Circus is a primetime nationally syndicated program that's carried on ABC, NBC, CNBC, and Westwood One News affiliates, plus CBS, Fox, and NBC sports affiliates across North America, with coverage from Hawaii to New York. Also, the Sports Circus is available to the 180 million subscribers on iHeartRadio, and the Sports Circus gets about 4 million website visitors per month, which could click through your website and bring sales. The Sports Circus provides great content featuring celebrity guests from sports and entertainment to our audience every weekday, which your company could greatly benefit from by increasing your visibility, foot traffic, eyeballs to your website, and calls from potential customers. Call us right now at
714-948-0100. Again, 714-948-0100.
Or email us at info@thesportscircus.com. That's info@thesportscircus.com. Drive your sales today by advertising with the Sports Circus.
Could you use a little extra money right now? If you'd like to borrow up to $100,000 and get pre-approved in minutes, call the number we'll give you at the end of this commercial. Our lending partners have already loaned millions of dollars to individuals just like you, and we're ready to lend you up to $100,000 if you qualify. Even if your credit is not perfect, you could use the money to pay off high-interest credit cards, for home renovations, or consolidate existing debt. You can get flexible, easy-to-pay terms. The consultation to find out if you qualify is free. To find out if you qualify for our special financing program, call this toll-free number 24 hours a day. 800-335-1376. 800-335-1376. 800-335-1376. That's 800-335-1376. Important terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Loan amount, annual percentage rate, and term will vary depending on creditworthiness. Applying does not guarantee approval. Account approval is subject to verification and confirmation of your credit history and acceptance by a lender. If you choose to apply for a loan through us, a consumer report will be obtained to evaluate your creditworthiness in connection with your application for credit.
That's the sound of sizzling, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks from UppercutChops.com. Their best-in-class filet mignons, New York steaks, and the king of all steaks, the tomahawk and cowboy cut ribeyes are the best in the business. Even their Prime Wagyu burgers will likely be the best you've ever had. Browse the full selection of steaks and chops at UppercutChops.com from the comfort of your home or on your mobile device. UppercutChops.com delivers all-natural, dry-aged USDA Prime Wagyu and Angus steaks and chops directly to your door, without the hassle of going to the grocery store and fight crowds to pick from a small selection of average at best meats with injected steroids, fillers, and coloring added to look good. Find out what's for dinner at UppercutChops.com or call 714-948-0100. 714-948-0100. 714-948-0100. Or make your selection directly at UppercutChops.com.
to the Sports Circus. I'm Roy Firestone. Now it's time to throw it back to Sal.
Thank you, Roy, and welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your ringmaster, Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP Television. This segment brought to you in part by our friends over at the College of Southern Nevada Athletics. Check them out at csncoyotes.com for upcoming games and events. That's the College of Southern Nevada Athletics, csncoyotes.com. Folks, make sure you check them out. A big welcome back to everybody listening in on our network affiliates and our independents from coast to coast, including our friends over in Atlanta, WDJY 99.1 FM. Thanks for waking up with us over there. And right down the road over in Auburn, Alabama, from Columbus, Georgia, in fact, all the way over to Montgomery. Thanks for driving home with us on WAUD, home of the Atlanta Braves, as well as everybody up and down the Midwest, throughout the heartland, all the way out to the West Coast, all the way to our friends in Honolulu, CBS Sports 1500 KHKA. That's home of the Yankees, 49ers, and the Alabama Crimson Tide. Plus, welcoming everybody on TV and all of our other independent stations as well, all of our cable affiliates, and sector and so forth. And the list goes on and on, even the Mars rover. All right. All right, back here with the discussion. We were talking about Joe Jackson in the last segment. We're going to continue on with Joe, give you a little bit of background on Joe Jackson. So, in his major league career, in case you didn't know, remember, this is the same guy that had a lifetime batting average of .356, and he also, as a rookie, hit .408. That's insane. His major league career, starting in 1911, Jackson's first full Major League Baseball season, he set several rookie records. Of course, that .408 batting average, of course, still stands, and that season is a record that still stands, as I mentioned, and was good for second overall in the league behind what? Ty Cobb hit .419 that year. That's insane. One of the few times in baseball history that a batting average above .400 did not win a batting title. Now, his on-base percentage of .468 also led the league as a rookie. The following season, Joe batted only .395 and led the American League in hits, triples, and total bases. On April 20, 1912, Jackson scored the first run in Tiger Stadium as well, which still stands, well, all the way up until a certain time. It stood all the way up until just a handful of years back in the grand scheme of things. So, anyway, think about this. The next year, he led the league with 197 hits and a .551 slugging percentage. In August of 1915, Joe Jackson was traded to the Chicago White Sox. 2 years later, Jackson and the White Sox won the American League pennant and also the World Series. So, I mean, look, basically at this point, Joe's kind of done it all in the first 5 years of his career, hitting a crazy, crazy batting average, averaging right around .390, .400, whatever the heck it is, just a crazy number. Anyway, so during the series, Joe Jackson, by the way, in the World Series, hit .307 as, of course, the White Sox beat the New York Giants. That would be the baseball Giants, not to be confused with the New York football Giants. And Jackson missed most of the 1918 season while working in a shipyard because of World War I. Now, in 1919, he returned strongly to post a .351 batting average during the regular season and .375 with perfect fielding in the World Series. And of course, however, the heavily favored White Sox lost conveniently the series to the Cincinnati Reds. And the following season, 32-year-old Joe Jackson, he only batted .382. And he was having, of course, one of his best overall seasons, leading the American League in triples and setting, by large margins, career marks for home runs, RBIs, fewest strikeouts per plate appearance when he was suspended along with 7 other members of the White Sox after the allegations surfaced that the team had thrown the previous World Series. Of course, there's that scandal. We have to talk about it because we're going somewhere with this, I promise. So, of course, after the White Sox lost the 1919 World Series to the Cincinnati Reds, Jackson and 7 other White Sox players were accused of accepting $5,000 each, which basically the equivalent of about $100,000 today. They were accused of it. In September 1920, a grand jury was convened to investigate the allegations. Jackson's 12 base hits set a series record that was not broken until 1964 and led both teams with a 375 batting average, 286 in the games the White Sox lost, and 545 in the games he won. He committed no charge errors and threw out a runner at home plate from the outfield as well. However, the Reds hit an unusually high number of triples, 3 out of 9 total, to Jackson's position in left field. And the White Sox pitcher said the team's outfielders were playing out of position and slowly fielding balls. So it was alleged that Jackson alleged to participating in the fix during the grand jury testimony on September 28th of 1920. In 1921, a Chicago jury acquitted Jackson and his 7 teammates of wrongdoing. Nevertheless, Commissioner Kennesaw Mountain Landis, he was the newly appointed commissioner of baseball, imposed a lifetime ban on all 8 players, saying, quote, regardless of the verdict of juries, no player that throws a ball game, no player that undertakes or promises to throw a ball game, no player that sits in a conference with a bunch of crooked players and gamblers where the ways and the means of throwing games are planned and discussed and does not promptly tell his club about it will ever play professional baseball, close quote. So after the grand jury returned its indictments, Charlie Owens of the Chicago Daily News wrote a regretful tribute headline, quote, say it ain't so, Joe, close quote. The phrase became legendary when another reporter later erroneously attributed it to a child outside the courthouse. When Jackson left the courthouse in the custody of the sheriff after telling his story to the grand jury, he found several hundred youngsters ages 6 to 16 waiting for a glimpse of their baseball idol. One child stepped up to the outfielder and grabbed him by his coat sleeve and said, quote, it ain't true, is it, Joe? Close quote. And Joe replied, quote, yes, kid, I'm afraid it is, close quote. The boy opened up a path for the ball player and stood in silence as he passed out of sight. And of course, the little guy said, quote, well, I'd never have thought it, close quote. So, in an interview in Sport nearly 3 decades later, Jackson confirmed that the legendary exchange never occurred. So there is dispute on this now. Remember, they were acquitted. And so Jackson's involvement in the scandal remains controversial to this day, and he reportedly refused the $5,000 bribe 2 times, even though it would effectively double his salary, only to have teammates Lefty Williams toss the cash on the floor of his hotel room. Jackson then tried to tell White Sox owner Charles Comiskey about the fix. Still, Comiskey refused to meet with him. Unable to afford legal counsel, Jackson was represented by team attorney Alfred Austrian. A clear conflict of interest. Before Jackson's grand jury testimony, Austrian elicited Jackson's admission of his supposed role in the fix by playing with whiskey. All right. And Austrian also persuaded the nearly illiterate Jackson to sign a waiver of immunity from prosecution. Interesting stuff here, folks. Trust me, I'm going somewhere with it. Years later, the other 7 players implicated in the scandal confirmed that Jackson was never at any meetings. Williams said they only mentioned Jackson's name to give their plot more credibility, although he did not say why Jackson would have been paid $5,000 and that he had been the case. Of course, Jackson's performance during the series itself lends further credence to the assertions, although the game's records show that he hit far better during the clean games than those that were allegedly thrown. And of course, a 1993 article in the American Statistician reported the results of statistical analysis of Jackson's contributions during the 1919 World Series and concluded there was a, quote, substantial support to Jackson's subsequent claim of innocence, close quote. So think about this, folks. An article in September 2009 issued of Chicago Lawyer magazine argued that Elliot Asanoff's 1963 book, 8 Men Out, purported to claim Jackson's guilt was based on inaccurate information. For example, Jackson never confessed to throwing a series game. And further, Asanoff omitted the facts from publicly available documents such as the 1920 grand jury records, proceedings of Jackson's successful 1929 lawsuit against Comiskey to recover back pay from 1920 and 21, and Asanoff's use of fictional characters within supposedly non-fiction accounts also damaged the book's credibility and accuracy. And back in 1989, Bart Giamatti declined to reinstate Jackson because the case was, quote, now best given to historical analysis and debate as opposed to a present-day review with an eye to reinstate, close quote. In 1999, the U.S. House of Representatives passed a resolution celebrating Jackson's sporting achievements and encouraged Major League Baseball to rescind his ineligibility. And the resolution was symbolic since the new U.S. government had no jurisdiction in the matter, and Jackson died in 1951, some 48 years earlier. Commissioner Bug Selig stated that Jackson's case was under review, but no decision was issued during Selig's tenure. In 2015, the Shoeless Joe Jackson Museum formally petitioned Commissioner Rob Manfred for reinstatement on grounds that Jackson had, quote, more than served his sentence, close quote, in the 95 years since his banishment by Landis. Manfred denied the request after official review, writing, quote, the results of this work demonstrates to me that it's not possible now, over 95 years since the events took place and were considered by Commissioner Landis to be certain enough for the truth to overrule Commissioner Landis' destinations, close quote. In 2020, ESPN reported that there's been a shift in policy, and it's unclear what might happen now. Back here with the conclusion of where we're going with this in just a few moments here on Sports Circus. I'm your ringmaster Sal of the Sports Circus, a primetime nationally syndicated television, radio, sports, and entertainment show. The Sports Circus covers topics others are too scared to talk about. There's no other primetime show like it out here that'll punch you in the face and you'll beg for more. Join me, Hall of Famers, world champions, and all-star celebrity guests for chaos and controversy here on Libsyn and all podcast platforms, plus thesportscircus.com. Remember, folks, it's a circus and we prove it every day.
Hello, Americans. It's Uncle Sam here. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes to the IRS or state, don't worry. I've got important news that may help you negotiate a lower tax bill. In today's economy, the IRS has released a variety of new rules and is offering more flexible terms to help Americans looking to settle their IRS debt. If you apply today, we may be able to lift your wage garnishments and release a freeze on your bank assets or business. Our team of tax professionals can resolve your case and stop collection actions against you. Even if you've been audited or haven't filed a return in years, they can help. Call right now and find out if you qualify to settle your IRS debt for far less than what you owe. Pick up your phone right now and call us for a free $500 IRS tax review. Don't wait. Here's the number.
Call right now. 800-950-2049. 800-950-2049. 800-950-2049. For the last time. That's 800-950-2049.
Do a search on how to get out of credit card debt, and you'll find everything from crazy promises to ways you can try to do it yourself. Many of those ideas just don't work, and they leave you broker than you were. Here's some advice. Call our debt helpline. In a quick and free 5-minute conversation, our experts will listen to you and learn about how much credit card debt you have, what your goals are, and then show you the right solution to help you get out of credit card debt with one new simple, affordable payment. The credit card companies make available special programs to help if you're struggling. All it takes for you to finally get out of credit card debt is one quick, free phone call. So please call right now.
800-948-6817. 800-948-6817. 800-948-6817. That's 800-948-6817. Paid for by the Debt Helpline.
That's ridiculous.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Hey everyone, Dave Jackson here, ESPN rules analyst on ESPN Hockey, and you're listening to the Sports Circus.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your ringmaster Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP Television. Folks, make sure to check out thesportscircus.com for our upcoming guests, our prior guest recorded shows, which can be found on Apple, Amazon, Audible, Spotify, Pandora, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Deezer, streaming platforms that I have not mentioned, as well as social media platforms too. Also, make sure you check out the partners page. Lots of great partners at thesportscircus.com. And of course, one of those is one of our favorites. That's Al's Number One Italian Beef at 1079 West Taylor Street in Chicago's Little Italy. Al's Number One Italian Beef, the creators of the Italian beef sandwich in Chicago's Little Italy. And folks, first of all, if you don't know what it is, go to alsbeef.com. That's alsbeef.com, and you can read about it. It is a sandwich that some people mistakenly compare to that blasted Philly cheesesteak sandwich. Yes, I did say sandwich, if you know what I mean. But anyway, it is leaps and bounds better. It's real cooking, and it takes probably about 22 hours to make the actual Italian beef sandwich, to actually prepare the beef itself, rather than throwing some kind of a poor cut of beef on a flat top and tossing some onions in, some cheese whiz, and slapping it on a bun and calling it a day. That's what that Philly cheesesteak sandwich is. Folks, let me tell you, the Italian beef sandwich is very, very different. Read about it at alsbeef.com. They are the creators of that incredible sandwich. And I have to tell you, folks, it is really something special. And I talk about it because I dig it. It's one of my favorites, and I can do that because it's my show, and I can talk about what I want to. All right. Anyway, welcome back to everybody. So I spent the first couple of segments talking about Shoeless Joe Jackson, former Chicago White Sox outfielder and Philadelphia Athletics outfielder and Cleveland Indians outfielder. And, of course, he's in the Indians Hall of Fame, which is now you can call it the Guardians Hall of Fame, whatever the heck. In any event, Joe Jackson, lifetime batting average, .356. He hit .408 in his rookie year. That is absolute insanity. I mean, seriously. So why are we talking about Joe Jackson? Yeah, the guy had been around for a long time. Died, 75 years ago, thereabouts, whatever. Well, of course we're talking about Joe because we're talking about now Pete Rose. That's right. That's right. A chorus of boos whenever Pete Rose's name comes up. And I say, look, Pete as a hitter, yeah, he was a good hitter. He was a good baseball player. He was a singles doubles hitter. He would stretch a single into a double, and he played with a lot of heart. Charlie Hustle. I won't take anything away from his playing ability. But the problem is the possibility of Pete Rose being reinstated into baseball is something that I have a real problem with. Because if you're going to do that, there are a bunch of unanswered questions. And so, look, the reality is, does Pete belong in the Hall of Fame? Well, according to baseball, according to what it takes to get in, it's on the field and off the field. And so Pete, as on the field as a player, his accomplishments speak for themselves. When he was managing, his chaos and wrongdoing speaks for itself. Now, in the case of Joe Jackson did not do what Pete Rose did. Joe Jackson got banned from Major League Baseball in 1920. And Joe Jackson was acquitted. He doesn't have any kind of police record or anything like that with baseball and arrests. Like Pete Rose has been in jail for tax evasion. First he said he wasn't gambling on baseball. Then he did say he's gambled on baseball. The whole thing's crazy. But what about the idea that Pete Rose could be instated by number 47? Number 47 being Donald J. Trump. Now, look, I happen to support Donald J. Trump. I happen to support his administration. I happen to support a lot of things. This is one thing about Mr. Trump that I absolutely unequivocally do not support. And when we think about the possibility, well, the Associated Press reported that Jeffrey Lenkov, a lawyer who represented Rose before he died at age 83, filed a petition, and Lenkov seeking reinstatement so that he could be considered for Baseball Hall of Fame. Well, look, as Rob Manfred contemplates the idea and the petition, well, it's the old after he died thing. Okay, well, there are some issues about that. And when we look at, well, okay, they can't go being Pete Rose, or in this case, I'm making a case for Joe Jackson, because if Pete Rose gets in there, they've got to put Joe Jackson in. But the reality is, so Pete can't go take a job with the Cincinnati Reds or Major League Baseball or the networks dealing directly with Major League Baseball. Well, I suppose that maybe the gambling world, there might be a job out there if he was still around. But the point is, how could you say that he did not wrong baseball? I mean, look, under a rule adopted by the Hall of Fame Board and their directors back in 1991, anyone on the permanently ineligible list can't be considered for election to the Hall. And that the Associated Press had noted that. Now, of course, Donald J. Trump had posted out there in his social media, etc., that he plans to issue a complete pardon of Pete Rose. And he also added that he would sign a pardon for Rose soon. Let's just leave it as soon. But of course, he hasn't addressed the issue just yet. So, what we don't know is Manfred hasn't given a time frame for when he will make a decision about Pete Rose being reinstated or not, or whatnot. So if Rose is reinstated by Major League Baseball, can he get into the Hall of Fame? So let's dig a little bit deeper here. So Pete Rose's reinstatement doesn't mean he would appear on the Hall of Fame ballot. The Associated Press noted that Rose would have to be nominated by the Hall's Historical Overview Committee, which is picked by the Baseball Writers Association of America, and approved by the Hall's board. Further, if Rose is reinstated, he may be eligible for consideration to be placed on a ballot to be considered by the 16-member Classic Baseball Era Committee down the road. So we're talking years down the road. Now, if that is the case, wait a minute. Wouldn't they have to do that for Joe Jackson? Because remember, Pete Rose gambled in baseball. Joe Jackson was acquitted. He wasn't guilty of anything. Joe Jackson was also illiterate. He would sign anything because he didn't know. He couldn't read. He could hardly write. In fact, his wife had done what? She signed his autograph in many cases. That's why Joe's authorized signatures or his signatures don't really bring a whole lot of money in the whole memorabilia and autograph, because we don't know if it's Joe or Joe's wife. But if you're going to bring Pete Rose into the picture, who is guilty, and guilty as charged, he has admitted he gambled. And what's more, we don't even know if Pete Rose had gambled or split the winnings with the other team, maybe the other team conspirators or co-conspirators or whatever the hell you want to call it. I don't know, the other players, the other team. We don't know that. We'll never know that. There were no gambling records written down or anything about possible revenue splits. So if I had a vote, Pete Rose would never get into the Hall of Fame because we can't answer those questions. And on top of it, first he said he didn't gamble, then he said he did gamble. All right, so we have a little bit of a problem here. And then on top of it, it says in every big league clubhouse, no gambling on baseball, period. And what did Pete Rose do? Well, guess what? He gambled. And because he gambled, that automatically should make him ineligible for life. So it doesn't matter what Donald J. Trump wants, doesn't matter what Mickey Mouse wants, or a unicorn or a mermaid. Ultimately, Pete Rose gambled on baseball, and the writers, if he even gets a shot to get in there, well, he's baseball all-time hit lead. He's the hit king, whatever. Okay, Major League Baseball's all-time hit king, but guess what? The real hit king, like it or not, folks, is Ichiro Suzuki. That is baseball, because baseball is a world sport at this point, that is baseball's true hit king. And he has over 100 hits more than Pete Rose in less years played. And just remember, think about that backstory of Pete Rose. Yeah, he was 17-time All-Star. Yeah, 4,256 hits. So that's all right, because Suzuki, that would be Ichiro, but you can call him Ichiro, had 4,300 and change hits. And, of course, Pete holds the record for that in Major League Baseball, record games as well, 3,562 plate appearances, 15,890, but he also has more strikeouts than anybody as well. Now, Pete was the 1973 National League MVP and played on 3 World Series winning teams. right? 2 with the Cincinnati Reds and 1 with the Philadelphia Phillies. So according to the Associated Press, the investigation revealed that Pete Rose bet on the Cincinnati Reds games over a 3-year stretch from 1985 to 1987 while playing for and managing the team, right? He was a player coach. And in 1989, Major League Baseball permanently banned him from the league. Of course, in 1997, he applied for reinstatement and met with Bud Selig. In November 2002, Bud Selig never ruled out the request. And of course, in 2015, Manfred denied Rose's application. So if all that happened and he was guilty, what about Joe Jackson? Joe Jackson was not proven guilty on anything. In fact, Joe Jackson tried to explain this to the owner for Charles Comiskey, and he wouldn't even hear it. But at the end of the day, Joe Jackson is not guilty, and that is by court. Pete Rose is guilty by his own admission, and yet some of the things that he left out. Pete Rose should not get in, but if Pete Rose does get in, then they must include Shoeless Joe Jackson. Back here in a few minutes, folks. Lots more to come.
Can your IRA stand up to the next financial crisis that our top economists are saying is at our doorsteps? By allocating a percentage of your IRA into physical gold and silver with a tax-free rollover, you can diversify and safeguard your holdings from turbulent markets and economic downturns by putting your IRA back on the gold standard. Find out how to safeguard your assets with a tax-free rollover with a Genesis Gold IRA. The only IRA that can hold physical precious metals. Call now for your free gold and silver report. Protect your IRA today with one simple phone call and learn how to qualify for up to $10,000 in free silver. Call Genesis Gold Group, empowering faith-driven stewardship. 800-932-5517. 800-932-5517. 800-932-5517. That's 800-932-5517.
If you served in the Marine Corps, by now you know about the contaminated water problem at Camp Lejeune. If you were stationed or worked at Camp Lejeune from 1953 to 1987, you probably have a lot of questions. We have some answers. You could be entitled to compensation. Billions of dollars are being allocated to pay for damages to anyone stationed at Camp Lejeune during that time. Unfortunately, it appears that officials may have known the contaminated water problem existed and did little to protect their men. The Semper Fi code was not honored. If you or someone in your family has developed a serious illness, including various forms of cancer, call this Camp Lejeune legal support line right now. You can't turn back the clock and change what happened, but you can certainly call right now and learn your rights as a Marine. Here's the number.
Call 800-335-7196. 800-335-7196. That's 800-335-7196.
Do a search on how to get out of credit card debt, and you'll find everything from crazy promises to ways you can try to do it yourself. Many of those ideas just don't work, and they leave you broker than you were. Here's some advice. Call our debt helpline. In a quick and free 5-minute conversation, our experts will listen to you and learn about how much credit card debt you have, what your goals are, and then show you the right solution to help you get out of credit card debt with one new simple, affordable payment. The credit card companies make available special programs to help if you're struggling. All it takes for you to finally get out of credit card debt is one quick, free phone call. So please call right now.
800-948-6817. 800-948-6817. 800-948-6817. That's 800-948-6817. Paid for by the Debt Helpline.
Hey everybody, this is Brian Urlacher. Welcome back to the Sports Circus.
Welcome back to the Sports Circus. I'm your Master Sal, live from Las Vegas in the AMP TV studio, AAMP Television. Folks, again, make sure you check out sportscircus.com for upcoming guests, prior guests, and all of our recorded shows, which there's well over 2,100 of them. They can be heard on pick your favorite streaming platform. Also, check out the store tab across the top of the sportscircus.com, and you can pick up your favorite hats and t-shirts and coats and sweatpants and pillows and mouse pads and travel mugs, etc., embroidered and or silk screened with the Sports Circus logo. And by the way, folks, those items are what? They're American made. So make sure you sport American made products through the sportscircus.com's website. And of course, the website always gives the lengthy applause, just because. And I'll have to say, the last few segments, look, it was the Joe Jackson story for the first half of the show, because Joe Jackson is absolutely worthy, Shoeless Joe Jackson, of being in Cooperstown. Whereas if Pete Rose gets in there by some stroke of a pen and some vote and some nonsense like that, who is guilty and proven, and he has actually admitted that he is guilty, well, then you've got to get Shoeless Joe Jackson in. And so there have been a lot of controversies and weird things that have happened in baseball. I'm all sports, but we're focusing on baseball today. How about the 1994 Cleveland Indians corked bat incident? You know, a lot of people forgot about this, but this is one of the good ones. I remember this one really clear. Now, of course, the 94 Indians corked bat incident took place on July 15th of 94. Mind you, that was the strike year, right before or right around the All-Star break at Comiskey Park in Chicago during a game between the Indians and White Sox. And of course, the first inning, White Sox manager Gene Lamont was tipped off that Indians batter Albert Bell was using a corked baseball bat. So you say, what's the deal with a corked baseball bat? Well, it's a specifically modified bat that's been filled with cork or other less dense substances to make the bat lighter. And of course, the lighter bat gives the hitter quicker swing, which may improve the hitter's timing, etc., etc. Okay, and so there's like a trampoline effect where the ball will essentially bounce off the ball or bounce off the bat a little bit faster and travel a little bit further, whatever. But nonetheless, under the rules of Major League Baseball, a manager may challenge one opponent's baseball bat per game, and Lamont challenged Bell's bat with umpire Dave Phillips, who confiscated the bat and locked it in the umpire's dressing room. And then we had the heist. So the Indians, knowing a bat was indeed corked, dispatched relief pitcher Jason Grimsley to go get that bat. And Grimsley took a bat belonging to Indians player Paul Sorrento and accessed the area above the false ceiling in the clubhouse and crawled across with a flashing flashlight of sorts, right? So one of those, right? So he could see, it's almost like a strobe light, in his mouth until he reached the umpire's room. He switched Bell's bat with Sorrento's and returned to the clubhouse. During the sixth inning, the umpire's custodian noticed the clumps of ceiling tile on the floor of the umpire's room, plus twisted metal brackets in the ceiling. After the game, Phillips noticed the bats were different when he saw one was that replaced, but was not as shiny and was also stamped with Sorrento's signature. That's right. So somebody wasn't too bright. In any event, the Chicago police were called and the White Sox threatened charges against the burglar. An investigation that, on that particular day, was carried out by a former FBI agent flown in by Major League Baseball, and the equipment room was dusted for fingerprints, and the path the burglar took was discovered. That's right. So, the Indians were ordered by the American League to produce Bell's original bat, that unaltered bat. Initially, the American League had threatened to involve the FBI in regards to the burglary, but they dropped the issue in exchange for the bat. So on July 18th of 1994, the bat was sent to Major League Baseball in New York, where it was x-rayed and then sawed in half in the presence of Albert Bell and the Indians general manager John Hart. The bat was found to be corked, and Bell was suspended by the American League for 10 days. On appeal, his suspension was dropped to 7 games, and the reduction made no difference. In the end, as Major League Baseball, as I mentioned, they went on strike. Now, that particular year, well, guess what? The White Sox were well in first place at the All-Star break. And then as they were marching through the season after the All-Star break, the White Sox and the rest of the league went on strike. And there was no World Series played in 1994. Now, I just happened to have one of those baseballs for the series that was never played, the game that was never played, a 1994 World Series baseball. It's a very, very rare item to have. It's one of those things. I don't collect baseballs or anything like that. I have a bunch of autographed balls, but I do have that one because back then, my beloved White Sox were en route to possibly go to the World Series. Nonetheless, whatever happened to Grimsley? Now, initially, Grimsley's participation in this whole caper was a secret. Now, in 1999, when he was a pitcher for the Yankees, he revealed his participation in an interview with the New York Times, and he stated that he had used Sorrento's bat to replace Bell's because of all of Bell's bats were corked. And, of course, this story was corroborated by teammate Omar Vizquel in 2002 in an autobiography, where he also said that all of Bell's bats were corked in the first place. Now, Bell, however, continued to assert that he had never used a corked bat. And, of course, in 2024, in an interview, Bell said he was able to laugh about the incident. So here's the funny thing about that whole thing. So when you think of Albert Bell, and look, Albert Bell is a pretty damn good player. So after the whole scandal, in 1997, owner of the White Sox had asked Big Frank Thomas, who do you want to hit behind you in the lineup to protect you in the lineup? And he said, ironically, Albert Bell. That's right. And look, Bell was a 5-time All-Star, 5-time Silver Slugger, home run leader in 1995, no doubt, probably because of a cork bat, but 3-time American League RBI leader also, 93, 95, 96, also in Cleveland's Hall of Fame. So the guy hit 295 for a career. Yes, he had 381 home runs, 1,239 RBIs, but he hit 295. Now, that's awful hard to do. When you're hovering around 300, those are when you start to approach Hall of Fame numbers. Now, if he didn't have the corked bats, he would probably be considered or put on the ballot. But I don't think that Albert Bell will ever get there in the same way that guys like Bonds and McGuire and Canseco and whatnot would ever make the Hall because of their alleged performance-enhancing drug situation. Well, Albert Bell had a performance-enhancing bat situation. But Albert Bell was one hell of a player, in case you don't know. I mean, look, there's been a whole bunch of other scandals in baseball. I mean, some of them are kind of fun, some are kind of funny. And when we think about it, we just kind of scratch our head and say, that really did happen? Yeah, I guess it did. So the Jason Grimsley thing was really one of those situations. But then there are those that really aren't scandals. Think about the story of how the Astros were set to play a game. A huge rain, tropical storm, whatever hit Houston. They weren't expecting it to be so bad, so they didn't cancel the game. So a handful of people showed up early for the game, and the system developed rapidly, of course, and flooded the entire area around the stadium. And the game was called, and the Astros had good and beer. That's right, with the fans. The Astros had a really good time with the fans on the field. Now, that was kind of a fun one. But we also think about, well, let's just say more than a few years ago, there were some interesting situations. Now, let's go back to, I think it was about 1982. So after arriving in Chicago to start a road trip, some of the Seattle Mariners players went to a grocery store and purchased 16 boxes of Jell-O. After finagling their way into the manager, Renee Latchman's hotel room, they poured the Jell-O into the toilet, sink, and bathtub, and then stuffed all the furniture in the bathroom. So according to an interview Anderson gave years later to Astros Daily, the players also unscrewed the telephone, removed all the light bulbs, and strung toilet paper all over the room. When Latchman returned, he threatened to call the police, so determined he was to find out who actually did this. Well, that wasn't the end of it. Jell-O pranks followed Latchman all season. Once when he went to take a swig of beer, he discovered that someone had poured the beer out and replaced it with Jell-O. And it wasn't until the end of the year that Larry Anderson, Richie Zisk, and Joe Simpson revealed themselves, these are White Sox players, showing up at a team party wearing giant Jell-O boxes over their heads. These are fun. It's kind of like the hot foot. If you've ever played baseball and sitting on the bench saying, well, either I'm not playing this game or I'm waiting for my turn, maybe pinch hit, I'm not starting. There's the proverbial hot foot where somebody will set your foot on fire. And that's kind of a fun one I actually have. I escaped the hot foot one time, and that was back, well, in the early 1990s. But I also went out with a giant, I guess a huge amount of shaving cream on top of my head. And I didn't know I was pitching the game. And I went out to the pitcher's mound because that was another thing that they do on the bench just for fun, is in between innings, maybe somebody will pull a prank on you. And they put a giant ball of whipped cream or shaving cream on top of my hat. And so, mind you, I walk out to the pitcher's mound, and the whole stadium's laughing at me. I'm like, what in the world's going on? And so the umpire walks out to me and goes, I see that you did shave today. He said, yeah, I got a nice clean clothes shave, just trying to be friendly with the umpire. Well, it turns out, he goes, next time you do your shaving, make sure you leave your shaving cream in the room. I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, take a look at your hat. I took my hat off, and there was the amount of shaving cream on there that was basically the size of a baseball right on top of my head. And these are some of the pranks that are played, and crazy things happen like that on the bench. And sometimes people will put shaving cream inside your baseball glove, inside the fingers of your baseball glove. And so, or even sometimes in, I guess it would be really it's your index finger. Sometimes there's shaving cream put in there. And so you put your fingers in the glove, but you keep your index finger out typically so the ball doesn't hurt your finger. Well, when it hits the glove. So in some cases, that particular index finger area is filled with shaving cream. And so when you go and catch the ball, unbeknownst to you, a big pile of shaving cream squirts right out of the baseball glove on top of it. That's right. Weird things happen on the baseball field. But guess what, folks? We're out of time here on the circus. We could do these all day long. Lots of fun here on the circus. And hopefully you like today's show. And listen, again, if Pete Rose gets in, they absolutely must. The voting members put Shoeless Joe Jackson in the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. That's going to do it for today's show. I'll see you in 23 hours right here on your favorite station. Until then, so long, everyone.
Can your IRA stand up to the next financial crisis that our top economists are saying is at our doorsteps? By allocating a percentage of your IRA into physical gold and silver with a tax-free rollover, you can diversify and safeguard your holdings from turbulent markets and economic downturns by putting your IRA back on the gold standard. Find out how to safeguard your assets with a tax-free rollover with a Genesis Gold IRA, the only IRA that can hold physical precious metals. Call now for your free gold and silver report. Protect your IRA today with one simple phone call and learn how to qualify for up to $10,000 in free silver. Call Genesis Gold Group, empowering faith-driven stewardship. 800-932-5517. 800-932-5517. 800-932-5517. That's 800-932-5517.